Welcome to Of Sound Mind and Spirit. I'm Shelly.
And I'm Lisa. We're sisters walking together on a journey of faith. We're not perfect.
We definitely don't have all the answers. We're inviting you to walk with us as we explore ways we can better know and grow in our faith together.
Welcome back to another episode from Of Sound Mind and Spirit. Hi, I'm Shelly.
And I am not Lisa.
No, you look very different.
Actually, I look pretty similar.
So for our listeners and those who aren't watching us on YouTube, Lisa is sick this week. She was supposed to record today and she was unable to. So I invited Lisa's goddaughter, Cameron, to come on in her as a substitute and to record with me about today's episode. Hi, Cameron. How are you?
Hi, Mom. I'm good.
Throw that one out there, huh?
Yeah. Well, you said Lisa's goddaughter, and I was like, well, that's true. I'm also your daughter. So.
Right. So for full disclosure, Cameron is my oldest daughter, and I've mentioned her many times because she runs a podcast called Holy Spontaneity. And Cameron, this would be your spontaneous moment for the week.
It actually would be my spontaneous moment for the week. So, but I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad you texted me and said, hey, do you want to do this with me? And I said yes.
Cool. So like I texted you and then spoke to you, was looking at my calendar when we were trying to plan this episode. Well, Lisa and I were trying to plan this episode. And I noticed that I have this new calendar. It's got like all the saints' days on it. And this week, almost every day was something with Our Lady. Almost every day was a Marian feast day or something related to Mary. So Sunday, which was this past Sunday was December 8th. Mm-hmm. There was the Immaculate Conception, which we celebrated actually on Monday.
Right. That one's a solemnity.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Mm-hmm. And then Tuesday is Our Lady of Loretto, which I don't know if you'd heard that story about the house. Mm-hmm. But I feel like that's a whole nother episode we could do.
It definitely is. Yes. The Holy House of Nazareth.
Mm-hmm. Right. Picked up and moved by the angels.
Exactly.
Wink, wink. Yeah. Angel family, not angels. And then Wednesday is Our Lady, Queen of the Angels. And then Thursday is December 12th, and it is Our Lady of Guadalupe.
Yes.
Fantastic, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you may be surprised to know this, but I did not grow up with Our Lady of Guadalupe. It wasn't as this huge feast day when I was a kid.
So. I don't think we did much for Our Lady of Guadalupe either. But she is really important for America, and for the unborn, since she is the patroness of the Americas and the unborn. But yeah, I don't think we really did much for Our Lady of Guadalupe growing up either.
But we saw the statue everywhere.
Well, yes, actually. Her statue or her icon has been in pretty much every significant religious place, either a place of worship or an office or something like that. Pretty much everywhere I go, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So
right. Well, when I was looking up information about today, recording this today, I discovered that it wasn't formally. How do I phrase this? The feast day wasn't formally announced for the whole, church calendar until 1999, the year you were born.
Oh,
sorry.
That's okay. You can age me. It's okay.
So I didn't know that's probably why I didn't hear about it growing up as much. I mean, it culturally, it was there. We're in Texas. We have a real strong connection with Mexico and Mexican culture. And
right.
So it stands to reason having Our Lady of Guadalupe everywhere, either the
Hmm.
image or the statue. But it wasn't until I looked it up that I realized it was Pope John Paul II, Saint Pope John Paul II,
Yes.
or as your sister would say, the goat, who
GB2
instituted
in
that
all of
feast
his
day.
glory.
Right?
Hmm.
So anyway, I thought we'd just talk a little bit about what is Our Lady of Guadalupe and what that means to us,
Hmm.
and how you feeling about that?
I mean, that sounds great to me, but I feel like we should let people know a little bit about what her story is before we get into all the nitty gritty.
Okay. You want to tell it? You want me to start?
You start, I'll finish.
Okay. Okay. So it was early one morning on the feast day of the Immaculate Conception in 1531. And there's a man, and I always thought he was a young man, but I looked it up. He was actually 57 years old. Juan
Really?
Diego. Mm-hmm. Juan
Wow.
Diego. And he was an Aztec, and I don't think he was Aztec, but he was indigenous. And his wife had recently passed away. And he was going to, like, I guess, Mass, going to a church service for the Immaculate Conception. And he was at the foot of Tepeyac Hill, which is really close to Mexico City today.
Hmm.
And he heard singing coming from above on the hill. And then he heard a voice calling his name. And so he sees a bright light.
Hmm.
Mary always says bright light, right? So he goes up to the top of the hill, and surprise, there's a lady there with clothes shining like the sun. And she welcomes him and tells him that she is the Immaculate Ever Virgin Mary, Mother of the true God, origin of all life, who creates all things and keeps them in being, the Lord of heaven and earth. Oh.
Hmm.
And then she's like, okay, I want you to build a house.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
by the
And I
way,
can't
go
imagine.
down and tell your bishop.
Right. And I can't imagine what he must have been feeling, right? Because here he was just living his life. He'd kind of, fallen away a little bit from the church after his wife passed away. And um, then this bright light shows up, says that she's the mother of God, and says, oh, by the way, you, a, just a regular person, go tell your bishop that I want a house for me here on this hill. Um, I think I might have looked back at her and said, really? Me?
Here?
What?
Here?
Why? I probably honestly would have just questioned her, which I'm not proud of, but
Well, he might have. There's no record of it, but you never know, right?
yeah. So what does he do next?
He goes to the bishop and he says, you'll never know. Guess what I just found out? I mean,
Hmm.
he was already a Christian, a Catholic, so he already believed in Mary. And naturally, the bishop's like, yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah. It's
Go away.
funny. It's funny how the bishops always underestimate who Mary chooses to appear to, right? I mean, we see the same thing in Lourdes, which is a whole other topic, of course, but yeah, the bishops are always like, I don't think so. Come back with a sign. Ask her for a
Yeah.
sign. Hmm.
Fatima.
Yes. Hmm.
Oh, but I see what you did there. You went to Lourdes because I am the Immaculate Conception.
Yes. Also, I was there.
Keep reminding me. So, but then she comes and appears to him again.
Hmm.
And she's like, so what happened? You need to go back and talk to the bishop again.
Hmm.
And again, he goes back, and the bishop then says, okay, bring me a sign, and then I'll believe
Yep. So
you.
the next morning,
Mm-hmm.
um, he so his uncle, he lived with his uncle. His uncle was very elderly and he was super sick. And so Juan Diego was looking actually for a priest because he was like, my uncle's about to die. I'd love for him to have last rites. So he was like, I don't have time for Mary right now. I'm not going to go up the hill I'm going to go around the hill. And so Mary, of course, she's like, wow, the attitude, comes down from the hill and sees him there. And of course, he's, like, sorry, Mary, I really, like, the bishop's still asking for a sign, but I really need to get to my uncle. And, all of this is just a lot for me right now. And so she says to him, am I not here who am your mother? Are you not under my shadow and protection? Am I not the fountain of your joy? And then she says, do not grieve nor be disturbed by anything. Do not be afflicted by the illness of your uncle who will not die now. Be assured that he is now cured. And so Juan Diego, in attempting to avoid Mary to get last rites from the priest, which would have been a great good, instead got a greater good because Mary came to him and said, don't avoid me. I'm your mom. And your uncle's going to be all right. So, but of course, that's all fine and wonderful, but he still doesn't have anything to bring back to the bishop. So Mary sends him to the top of the hill and she says, go cut flowers. But what kind of flowers were they?
Roses.
Mm-hmm.
And in December
Mm-hmm.
on the top of a hill.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you know what kind of roses they were?
Definitely not native, that's for sure.
No, and this is kind of special though. She I think the story goes that she arranged the roses in his tilma. And for those who don't know, a tilma is like a cloak, and it's made out of a cactus fiber. So it's kind of a rough, raw fiber. And she arranges these roses in his tilma so that he can bring them to the bishop. Well, spoiler alert, they're Castilian roses, not native to Mexico. And they're actually from the specific region of Spain where the bishop is from. So the bishop would immediately recognize and know that this is a miraculous sign that he asked for. So.
Yeah, I love that because details do not go unnoticed with Mary and Jesus. And B, I just love that Mary is not passive. Like, she is so spunky. And she's like, fine, the bishop wants something, as a sign. I'm going to give him a sign and it's going to spook him into doing exactly what I've requested. So, so Juan Diego takes all these roses back to the bishop and then tells him what he saw at the top of the hill. And then the bishop was in a room with a lot of other people. And so everyone else and the bishop just fell to their knees because all of these roses came out of the tilma and there was an image of Our Lady on the tilma. Like,
Believe that.
Wasn't painted on, wasn't, Juan Diego couldn't have just sat there and painted it as he was coming down the hill, right? So, but the flowers like fell out of the tilma, revealing that image of Our Lady. And so the bishop, of course, immediately ordered the construction of a chapel, and he's there like begging for forgiveness for not believing in the beginning. And so Our Lady gets her chapel. But there's something really special about the tilma of Juan Diego and
the consequences of her appearing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll dive into a little bit of that. I want to point out that Juan Diego was not the only person that she appeared to in these 3-4 days of events in what I say it was 1531. She also appeared to his uncle, which I think was Juan Bernardino.
Yes.
And she told him, you're going to be healed. And he was healed. And so that makes 5 apparitions, I think, over the course of the time there. And it's really amazing. So Cameron, where is the tilma today?
It's in Mexico City.
in
And
the
you can go
shrine.
see it. Yeah.
Okay. And you know how close it really is to where we live in Texas?
Mm, I don't know. How close?
It is only 912 miles away.
Wow.
We need to go.
We do need to go.
I
We
mean,
could make it our own little family pilgrimage.
we need to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know why we haven't been, but I don't know. Our eyes have always been overseas.
We have definitely put a lot of effort into getting overseas to visit Our Lady, and we don't even need to.
Mhm.
We could just
No.
go across the border.
It's actually closer than the apparition that happened in Wisconsin.
Mm,
You know about that one in
that makes
Wisconsin?
a lot of sense. Yeah.
That one's something like 1,300 miles away.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. It's also one of only 16 formally recognized Vatican approved Marian apparitions. And Pope Leo the 13th in 1895 was the one to actually approve that.
crazy, isn't it? How the Vatican, ahead of the church, has all these rules and processes so that they make sure everything is definitely investigated and they
Mhm.
can say with certainty that something, I think they call it supernatural,
Right.
which just means super and natural, like greater than something that's normally in nature.
Right.
That this has truly taken place and happened. But yeah, it's 16, there's hundreds of accounts of Mary appearing
Hmm.
all throughout history.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
that's
And
interesting.
what's really interesting to me, I was actually thinking about it just now. I didn't mention this to you earlier, but um, I find it really interesting, the process that these apparitions have to go through. And, on the one hand, people might say, like, why wouldn't we believe, Mary when she appears to these saints? Why does it need to go through a process? And I think that it's not about believing that Mary appeared. I think it's more so to kind of encourage the church to look to Mary in these different titles. And also just to kind of comfort people who may be a little bit more hesitant to accept these. I think a lot of people need the approval of the Vatican in order to, like, I don't know, feel okay feeling close to this title of Mary. Um, so
To
it's
accept it.
it's not the Vatican saying, like, oh, it's not real until we proclaim it real. It's really like, we've looked into this, and if there's anybody who comes and says this isn't legitimate, we can back it up. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I didn't really look hard at the process because they actually changed it earlier this year, this calendar year. But I know that like the local bishops can approve things first. And then so it's kind of like saints. There's a hierarchy and there's a process and it goes up and up and up. But I
Right.
agree with you there about it's one thing to believe, but there's another thing to like kind of wonder, like, is this really happening?
Hmm.
Did this really happen?
Hmm.
And I think because the Vatican has the authority to say, I mean, they don't just do it willy nilly. They have authority to say, yes, this is true. We've checked all the angles and we feel confident in saying that we believe without a doubt, and you should feel confident in believing it too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think that's important because we live in a time now where we have to defend our faith. We're called to defend our faith. And sometimes it just, it's a little easier for us if the Vatican has gone through all of these processes, because then we can pull from that and say, like, well, look at what this scientist was brought in and was able to look at this and determine its validity. Um, and because, a lot of times if we use religious arguments, people are like, but that's what just the church says, right? And so the Vatican goes through a whole length to make sure that um, we have the ability to defend our faith, and especially to defend our mother. So
Hmm. And so that's why what we're going to talk about, this tilma, is so fascinating.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So, what makes it so special, right? And there's two reasons kind of at the top. The first one is that it is the only apparition where Our Lady left a miraculous image of herself, and it's not made by human hands. And
Mhm.
the only other thing I can think of that's kind of like that is the Shroud of Turin,
Mm.
that there is a miraculous image
Mhm.
of Christ on the
Right.
shroud. Well, in this case, it's Our Lady. It's the only one that we know of.
Mhm.
And the second thing is and I did not know this, but it's the only universally venerated Madonna and child image where she appears pregnant instead of holding the infant Jesus.
Holding the Christ child. Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know why, except maybe because that's how she was connecting with this indigenous Aztec culture.
Mm. But that's also why we can consider her the patroness of the unborn, right? Because she appears pregnant in this image.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And it had really great significance to the local culture at the time. You have to put yourself kind of in that context. It's 1531. Columbus discovered America. Columbus discovered America
Yeah.
in 1492. Tell me I'm getting this right because I'm getting old.
Yeah.
Columbus sailed the ocean blue.
1492.
Yeah.
Columbus sailed the
Okay.
ocean blue.
So this isn't a long time after, right? The Spanish are relatively still in the first 25 years here, 30 years here in Mexico, what we now call Mexico. We'll just call it Mexico.
Yeah.
And you know what the Aztecs practiced, what
Yeah.
their
Well,
religious culture was.
ritual sacrifice, right?
Human sacrifice, right? Ripping people's hearts out and sacrificing infants and children.
Mm.
And I mean, they talk about rivers running with blood. I mean, blood running like rivers down these Aztec temples and things that are still
Right.
there.
Wasn't it on
Um,
that hill as well where he found her?
yes, so Tepeyac Hill is actually one of the locations for
Mm.
centuries of this
Yet
human
another
sacrifice.
reason why she's the patroness of the unborn, right? Because of all these children that were sacrificed. What a redemption for them to have built that chapel on that hill.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so then, as we mentioned, the image is on her tilma, and it's on display. It's still on display,
Mm-hmm.
and it's been examined scientifically many times. And Cameron, there's not a single brushstroke. There's not even any sign of paint.
I
There's
know.
no identifiable source of any coloring
Mm-hmm.
in the cloth at all.
Yes. Yes.
Right?
I love looking up and reading about the tilma. I truly can't get enough of it because every single part of that image is miraculous. There's not a single part, I mean, down to the material of the cloth and to, the stars around her. Like there's not a single part of that that could be replicated by man.
And every single part of it has meaning,
Mhm.
a local cultural meaning to it.
Right. Mhm.
So we'll just go into a couple of those meanings right quick. So she the flowers that are on the dress
Mhm.
represent truth. So for the Aztec culture, for those indigenous, I don't know what to call them. Do we call them indigenous? Do we call them Aztec culture? Should I have looked up what the specific, names were for all the? I'm just going to call them the Aztecs, okay? But for them, all of these things in Mary's image on the tilma, they correspond or correlate to something that's in the Aztec culture, in their religious
Mhm.
culture. And so it confirms and affirms who she is visually without there being any words, without there being any missionary priests trying to teach them about Christ or Mary. Um, but the flowers represent truth. And there's a specific four-petal flower that's their Aztec symbol for life and divinity. And it's right above the womb on
Oh.
her gown, right? They would have known she was pregnant because the black sash around the waist is a
Yeah.
cultural tradition that means
Mhm.
pregnancy.
Yep.
They would have known she was a virgin an unmarried woman because her hair is not braided.
Mhm.
And that's, again, a cultural reference for them. The blue-green mantle is their color for royalty. I mean, just these tiny
So
little
she would
things,
have been
right?
considered a princess of theirs, a queen of theirs.
Empress.
Mm.
Yeah. So she's standing on the moon, right? The moon are on her feet.
Mhm.
It's like clothed in the sun and the moon at her feet, like in Revelations. But the moon, her standing on the moon also shows that she's more powerful than their gods because their gods, one was represented by the moon.
Gotcha.
So
I actually didn't know that one.
cool.
So that's really good.
Now, she also stands on a crescent moon. And get this, it's the same crescent moon that was in the sky the day she appeared.
Of course it was. Because Mary's so intentional, right? And then if you're going to talk about the moon, you have to talk about the stars.
I
So
thought you
the
might.
stars on her mantle are exactly as they would have appeared on that day, December 12th in 1531. And they're still like that. They've not changed, right? So if you go to
Mhm.
Mexico City and you're at the basilica and you're standing on the little, it's kind of like it's like one of those walking paths that you have at the airport, right? You just stand
Oh,
on
like
it
a
and you go
moving
past
walkway?
it. It's a moving walkway. Thank you. So if you're standing on it and you're looking at it, you're still seeing the exact same stars that they would have seen, that Juan Diego would have seen in the sky and on the tilma. So,
Mhm.
and the perspective of those stars is oh my gosh, as if you're looking from behind the sky to earth. So like from heaven looking down to earth. And the pattern of the stars place the constellation Corona Borealis, which is the crown, on her forehead, Virgo, which is the virgin, over her heart, and Leo, the lion, over her womb. So that, I mean,
Mind blowing.
truly, but also like that it stands through time. That is one that always gets me, right? Like this was the importance of it to them, like the Aztecs at the time, right? But also the significance, because we still use those constellations, albeit sometimes in a different way now, but we still utilize those constellations. We still understand the moon, and we understand what it was made from. So like it's not just applicable to Juan Diego, to the bishop, to all the others who are in the room. It still stands for us today. And it will still stand for all those who come way after we're gone.
Right.
So, mhm.
And the tilma is still there,
Yeah. Mhm.
not decomposed.
Yeah.
I
That's
mean,
huge. Because what material did you say it was out of again?
some sort of a cactus fiber, which isn't a permanent fiber. I mean, it would
Yeah,
just
that's a
decompose
plant.
naturally. Yeah.
Right. So it would have been gone. I mean, my jeans fade after like 3 years. So like and those are cotton.
Well, and the fun thing with modern technologies, you can go back and watch videos of like when Pope Francis went there, and they actually it was Pope Francis, and they actually lowered uh, the tilma in the case. They lowered it
Mhm.
down so that he could see it. I think they had it down for a while, and people could actually walk past it while it was low. And I heard that there was an attempted bombing of it, like earlier in the 20th century,
Mm.
and everything around it was destroyed, but not the actual, and it wasn't bulletproof glass or anything like it is today. Not the tilma. Nothing about the tilma was disturbed.
Wow.
Crazy.
Mary said not today.
So, okay, that, and then we got to wrap this up because it's getting late. But my favorite thing,
Mhm.
which I don't know when they discovered this, but I remember the first time I heard this, I just could not believe it. I mean, could not get over this. And that is that when they took it down and they went over it microscopically and looked at everything, they discovered that looking through a microscope, in Mary's eyes, there's a reflection of
Yeah.
the images of the two people who were there at the time the tilma was unveiled, or maybe more. But
Mhm.
specifically, there's an image of Juan Diego and the bishop
Yeah.
reflected in her eyes as if you are seeing her eyes with the reflection. I'm just like, wait a minute. Yeah, because most of the pictures we have of this, they're too dark or,
Mhm.
they're not sharp enough for us to see that. But you,
Yeah.
you believe that?
I mean, it kind of gives me the shivers a little bit, like seeing exactly what Mary would have seen, and also that she allowed us to see what she was seeing through the image that was on the tilma. I mean, the more that I read about miracles, whether it's Eucharistic miracles, whether it's the Shroud of Turin or it's the tilma, I it just I mean, I don't even have the words for it because it's so incredible and such a gift that we are not worthy of. Um, you know, I'm just so grateful to have these because it really does help us know that like Mary is our mother and Mary is the mother of God, and she deserves all the grace and all um the glory
Everything.
and yeah.
Yeah. I mean, she always comes with the same type of messages if you think about it. She comes down and she offers peace.
Mm,
She offers healing.
mhm.
She always asks us to pray. She
Yes.
always asks us to repent and turn away from
Mhm.
sin. She always asks us to spread the news, the good news of the gospel of Christ and salvation and hope. She does not want us to be passive.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and she does that everywhere she goes,
Mhm.
everywhere she shows up.
Yes. It's always the same message, you know.
Yeah. Did we mention that because of this particular apparition, Our Lady of Guadalupe, that there were millions of people who immediately or over the next 10 years like converted to Catholicism?
We didn't say that, but we should because I keep forgetting sometimes I forget how young the Americas are just, you know, um opposite to Europe and other continents. I just kind of
Mhm.
forget how young the Americas are.
Mhm.
Um, but that is really significant because what was going on in Europe at the time?
In the 1500s, there's
Mhm.
this this person, a priest called Martin Luther, who was
Yeah.
nailing something to a church door.
Yeah. Yeah, Martin Luther, who was splitting up the church for the, I think, second time. So
Mm. And
all
then,
of
well,
that was
don't
going
forget,
on.
you've got King Henry VIII now, who
Yes.
within 10 years, more or less, of this event
Created
was
another church. Right.
creating his own church.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of turmoil over there, but here
Mhm.
you've got these new people arriving on what they consider to be a new continent, and there's there's this. Can you imagine being confronted with a religion, a culture that sacrifices like they did children and human beings like that? I
Mm,
mean, how bizarre to try and teach them Christ's love and the
right.
greatest commandment of loving people for themselves, and that you don't have to sacrifice any of this way.
Yeah.
But they said that over 10 years, over 9 million people converted without
Wow.
force, without bloodshed, without, it averages out to like 3,000 people.
Yeah. Truly of the
So,
only the of like their own conversion of heart, right? Because of this apparition.
mhm, yeah.
That's incredible.
So,
Worth
anyway.
noting for sure.
so, um, you went to the Blessed Stanley Rother Shrine in Oklahoma City, didn't you?
I did.
And don't they have an Our Lady of Guadalupe back
They
there?
do, yes. So you go up this hill and they have a bigger than life size Our Lady of Guadalupe and an also bigger than life size Juan Diego on his knees with the tilma. And I think I have a picture. Maybe I can send it to you. Um, but actually, Lisa's daughter and I were there together in Oklahoma City. So we did get to visit it, and it was really, really beautiful. Um, Also, I'm not sure why. Do you know why they have that there at Blessed Family
Probably
Brothers?
because Blessed Family Brother was martyred in, I'm going to mix up the country. I think it was Guatemala, but in South
Okay.
Central America. And
Okay.
she is patroness over the Americas. So my
Right.
guess is it's correlated to that. So,
Okay. Well,
but
yes, I was there and it was absolutely beautiful. And it was really just, I mean, seeing this like larger than life version, but also, being able to stand right next to the kneeling statue of Juan Diego and looking up and seeing her the way he would have seen her
oh wow.
also made me think, how did he not, like, maybe he was so struck with wonder and awe. I always kind of wondered, like, when you have this person who, Mary appeared to, how do they not freak out? Maybe they're just so full of like wonder and awe, or she like gives them the grace to stay. But I I think I would like be very terrified. So I don't know. But yeah, it was beautiful.
Oh,
A little bit easier to get to than Mexico. So I guess if you don't have a passport and you'd rather, stay in the US, go visit Oklahoma City.
well, even closer to home, the University of Dallas has a piece of rock from Tepeyac Hill,
Mm,
and it has the, what do you call it, like the wax seal that confirms it's really from the place, certification.
right. Hmm.
And then they have a really pretty Our Lady of Guadalupe statue that's kind of out in the back. I remember
Gotcha.
seeing it when we were there for the graduations. So,
Oh, yes. I do remember that. We took pictures
hmm
by it.
hmm yeah,
Yeah.
because it's real, real pretty.
Yeah. So
All
there you
right.
go. If you can't go to Mexico City, you can visit her in different ways. She's probably, there is probably a picture of her in an office building or a church somewhere. So, yeah,
Oh, I defy you anywhere in Texas to go into a church and not find a picture of Our Lady of Guadalupe.
somewhere. She might just be in the narthex, but I promise she's in there.
Guarantee it.
Yeah.
Guarantee it.
Hmm.
So, all right. Well, Cameron, I want to thank you very much for being here today. And before you go, I'm going to treat you like any other guest, although you're kind of a guest host. I'm going to treat you like a guest and ask you for a sister story, because I know you have a sister. Kind of have firsthand knowledge that you have
Yeah.
a sister. So,
Um, sure. So it's funny now because but so when we first moved into the house y'all are at now, my sister and I were, I don't she's going to say that I shoved her. That's probably true. We were arguing as sisters do. I think I must have been probably 13 or 14 at the time, which means she was close to 10 or 11. But we were playing roughhousing, whatever,
playing. Hmm I remember y'all playing.
near your office door, which happened to be her bedroom at the time. And I'll go with her story and say that I shoved her into the door, right? And the door broke in like the bottom middle of it. Like there's a little piece that just got like poked in to the door. And we were like, oh my gosh, mom and dad are going to find out. This is horrific. Like, we are going to get the doors taken off the hinges. We are going to get in so much trouble. And then I was like, wait a minute. I have white paint. We can just push,
I don't.
push
I
the
want to know where
piece.
you had white paint from. Okay, keep going.
I I just had white paint. And so it was like acrylic paint from Hobby Lobby. So we pushed a little piece of the
Oh,
door back in and I painted over it.
oh my gosh.
And I'm telling you, for whoever's listening, mom and dad went years without knowing this. Mom aged me at the beginning, but I'm 25. So this was at least 10 years ago, and they
Hmm.
just found it this year.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've seen it on the door, but you know, I was probably at work. I could
Hmm.
never have told you what happened to that door.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. When
now I know.
I was talking to dad about it at Thanksgiving, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I thought I just missed that in the walk around when we got the house inspected." And I was like, "No, that was us. We broke the
Hmm.
house."
You broke that.
So,
You probably got people wondering why you said that. Oh no, we're gonna get the doors taken off the hinges.
oh, I mean, that was one of our punishments, right? Like, if
Hmm.
we slammed the door to y'all's house, we got our doors revoked.
Your
So,
door privileges.
are my door privileges. Yeah, which is
Yep.
fair.
Yep.
Can't
A
have
lot of
nice
teenage
things.
girls slam doors. That's right. So,
Yeah, there were a lot of times where I didn't have the door on the hinge for a good amount of time. Honestly,
you know,
though, I
it's
think it
funny.
was more of
I'd
a
forgotten
punishment
about
for
that until you
I think it
said
was more of a punishment for dad because he had to sit there and take it off the hinges and find somewhere to put it. Like,
it. He got good at it.
he did get good at it. It's not a good thing.
He could take a door off door off the hinges like nothing. Stupid,
Yeah.
like what is that F1 stuff y'all watch with the tires, the pit stops?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he gets that fast. That's funny.
Okay, and then the last question for you is, what saint is kind of walking with you right now? Who's other than Our Lady of Guadalupe?
Yeah. So for this past year, it has been Saint Padre Pio. He kind of found me, and more than gently nudged his way into my life. So I kind of see him everywhere. And so I was actually for my birthday given um, a book with reflections from him, like mostly from all the letters that he wrote. Uh, all of his like spiritual daughters or his spiritual director. Um, and so I reflect on those daily, or sometimes, a week goes by and then I'm catching up 7 in one day. And then another, she's not a saint yet, but servant of God, Chiara Corbella Petrillo, who actually only passed away in 2012. And she has been also just kind of popping up occasionally in my life. So I'm curious to see how my relationship with her will grow. But both of those saints have been really, really lovely to me, and both on, not too far from each other in Italy. So the next time I'm back in Italy, I'll just have to visit them. But
Is
yeah.
she the one that you were like, how can we get to the cemetery in Rome?
Yes. Yeah,
And I
because she
told
was
you,
3 miles outside of the walls, and so we couldn't make it over to
yeah, we did not have the time for
her
that.
her grave. But I would really love to meet her husband and her son someday. So I know if I remember correctly, her husband like does, invite people in and talk to them about Kiara. So yeah.
Wow. Well, that will be a very spontaneous moment someday.
Oh, that would be great. That would be so good.
All right, Cameron, tell our listeners where they can find you and um, who your audience is, who your target audience is.
Yes. So I was going to say for all those who are listening, if you would like to listen, or if you have young adults who would like to listen, my college friend and I host a Catholic young adult podcast. It's called Holy Spontaneity, and you can find it on Apple, Spotify, and Google. We're also on Instagram at Holy Spontaneity. And then if you're interested in life and faith content from me, you can also find me on Instagram at Cameron Ray Kelly. So, yeah.
And she's fantastic.
Oh,
So
thanks.
spiritual, Cameron. I mean, really, truly, you're a blessing.
Oh,
I don't know
thanks,
what I
Mom.
deserve to have you.
Stop. You can't. This is emotional for a podcast, okay?
This is nothing like when Lisa, your aunt and I are talking. So we'll see how it lands. I don't know.
I'm just a little more spontaneous.
No, she's pretty spontaneous, your Aunt Lisa. I'm the one that likes to have a plan, and no, we'll just see what happens.
Mm.
So, all right. Well, Aunt Lisa, or your Aunt Lisa, sorry, Al. Lisa usually does all of the closing stuff and tells people to like and share and leave us a review for Christmas as our little
Mhm.
Christmas present. If you like
Mhm.
our podcast, to give us a review, um, leave us a comment.
Yeah.
You could probably say it for me better.
So make sure you go ahead and like and subscribe. Leave us a rate and review because that tells the algorithm to put this in front of other people who would also enjoy this episode. And for a little Christmas present, if you haven't gotten them one yet, leave a 5-star review and make sure you actually type something up because that's a lot more helpful to the algorithm than just a rating. Thank you.
There she is. See? All right. Well, thank you everyone who is listening, and we really appreciate you. I hope you have a wonderful feast day of Our Lady of Guadalupe if you're listening on Thursday when this
Yeah.
comes out. And if not, spend some time and look up her story. And seriously, y'all go find the picture of her eyes, the reflection in her eyes, and look at the tilma. All right.
Definitely do that.
Thanks everyone for being here. You can say bye.
Oh, bye.
Bye.